All right, welcome to today's webinar entitled The Parent Perspective. Today we're going to be diving into how apprenticeships have shaped career paths and transformed families. We are going to have the pleasure of getting to speak both with some parents of apprentices, recently graduated apprentices, and those that were parents when they were navigating and going through their apprenticeship. So really excited for our conversation today. Welcome. We are here celebrating Youth Apprenticeship Week, the inaugural Youth Apprenticeship Week. This is building off a lot of the success from National Apprenticeship Week. We are in the midst of a nationwide celebration that highlights the benefits and value of registered apprenticeship for youth. And we consider youth anywhere from 16 to 24. So this week, many employers, educators, labor unions, workforce professionals, partners all across the country who are registering apprenticeship programs that provide pathways for youth to earn competitive wages. We've all been celebrating together and celebrating the young people that have really led the way in this. So this is an opportunity for all of us to host an event. So we're going to be sharing about some remaining events that are happening today, tomorrow, and Thursday, and how registered apprenticeships is a sustainable pipeline for skilled and diverse talent for the days the jobs of today and the future of work. I do want to just highlight a couple of special attendees we have today. I see in our midst, Deputy Administrator Mike Qualter. Thank you for joining. I also see Abby Allen, who is a apprenticeship and training program specialist at the U.S. Department of Labor. These week's events from Build Within, we've been hosting events all over the country, are made possible through the Apprenticeship Building America grant, which we're very honored to be partners with the U.S. Department of Labor team. So thank you, Deputy Administrator Mike Qualter and the whole team at the Office of Apprenticeships, who really have been critical in fostering a community of support for youth apprenticeships across the nation. And today you'll get to see a little bit of what that looks like in real life scenarios and real life families. So a little bit of what we have on the for our panelists today. We are honored to welcome Floor Marshall, a former youth apprentice and current software engineer. So Floor works at as a software engineer for an AI company. Before embarking on her career in tech, she worked in finance and operations, and her journey into technology started by way of apprenticeship. And that's opened up many opportunities and what she mentions a lifelong love of learning. We also have joined here with us Steven Swartz. He is the parent of an apprentice graduate, graduated last December as a QA analyst, and he is a retired lawyer and active pickleball player. And I've just recently gotten into pickleball, so would love to chat more about that sometime. We are also welcomed today by Miss Tasha Evans. She proclaims herself as both a continuing student and a full-time employer. So she is a medical management specialist at Elevance Health. She loves to travel and loves music. And when those things come together, traveling to different parts of the world and listening to music, that's really where she comes alive. So thank you all for joining us today. I want to kick it off. Again, we're celebrating National Youth Apprenticeship Week. For those, maybe are very familiar with apprenticeships or those that are newer to the conversation, I want to provide just a little bit of background to frame our conversation today. So we can go to the next slide. And what is an apprenticeship? At the end of the day, an apprenticeship is a job. We'll hear a little bit about the myths that some of our parents and apprentices had about apprenticeships before learning more. But at the end of the day, they're a job, and the benefits for the apprentice is it's an opportunity to accelerate into a high growth opportunity without incurring a lot of the time and financial commitment that some other pathways like college or other educational opportunities. There is transparency on the front end of how long is this, how long is this going to be, the duration. There's transparency about what are the skills and competencies to be gained. There's transparency on what is the training that I will receive as an apprentice and what is that mentorship and the wage increases. So the more I learn, the more I earn, the more I contribute. So those are some of the benefits for apprentices, benefits for employers, the ability to bring in highly motivated, highly talented individuals that maybe, don't have all the experience or all the skills day one, but they come in and they learn quickly, add extreme amount of value very quickly, and they're able to learn and grow throughout their apprenticeship. Benefit for all of us as we think about the future of work. Many positions, many jobs that maybe don't require a 4-year degree that are in high demand. We think about cybersecurity, a lot of the technology roles, healthcare, education. So as a nation, to continue to prosper, we need talented people in these roles. So benefits for all when it comes to the world of apprenticeships. And now let's dive in to hear directly from our wonderful panelists. So I want to start with you, Miss Evans. So China, who recently graduated from Customer Success Manager Apprenticeship. I actually have the pleasure of having gotten to work with her very closely. When she called you and said, "Hey, Mom, I'm thinking about this apprenticeship. I'd love to hear a little bit about your reaction, your questions, and what you thought."
When she initially called me, she was working for the restaurant industry. And she called me many nights upset, crying, stressed out over the job. So I told her, it's something else out here for you. You're very smart. You're very intelligent. You'll find something else. So then she called me. She said, "Oh, Mom, I found an apprenticeship that's dealing with tech. Tech." I said, "Computers?" I said, "Wow." I said, "That's a good industry." So she got into the apprenticeship. I was very excited for her because she explained to me how it went. She was getting paid and she was learning at the same time. And she picked up many skills from the apprenticeship. So watching her from a 22-year-old child to a 25-year-old child now and seeing her progress, she really became more responsible and more independent. So I was very excited for her to be into the tech field because there are not many women in this field. So I was very excited for her to get into the field. And so I was what I would say for parents, I would recommend that they do some research about apprenticeships, and because it's a life-changing career path. That's my recommendation.
That's great. Thank you, Miss Evans. And it's interesting to
You're
hear,
welcome.
how learning that it's paid and that she would be learning that those were some things
Mhm.
that maybe were misconceptions about the apprenticeship, that maybe they were unpaid, or perhaps it wasn't a full-time job. So thank you for sharing a little bit. We're so glad that she found apprenticeships. I think she found us through the Department of Employment Services, and we
Oh,
thank them for
mhm.
that partnership, and we're always indebted for them introducing China to Build Within.
Thank you.
Floor, handing it over to you. Tell us a little bit about how you first learned about apprenticeships and how that process was, and finding yourself and getting your foot in the door in the apprenticeship space.
Yes, totally. It was about 2019, and I honestly had no idea about apprenticeships or if it was an option. And so I had joined a Facebook group for Latin people in tech, and I was desperate for an opportunity, a foot in the door, anything that I could get into, because I was basically transitioning from a career path that had nothing to do with tech and software engineering. So for myself, I thought I was making a great leap. I didn't even know if it was possible. Yeah, so I connected with someone in the Facebook group. They put me in touch with Jimena and everyone there. And next thing I knew, my son and I were moving from New York City to the DMV area where I have family. So it was really great to have it all, line up and for the opportunity.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Floor. Steve, I'm curious for you when your son first shared, this opportunity to move into a QA analyst apprenticeship. What was your reaction? What questions did you have at that time?
Well, we were quite excited because we knew that this was an area that would fit very well with his skill set. For one thing, he's extremely knowledgeable about computers, tech, and he's interested in it. Even when he was a little kid, when he would get presents at Christmas time, when he wouldn't just open the present, open the box, and start playing with it. He'd find a toy that was assembled and he'd disassemble it because he wanted to see if he could reassemble it without reading any directions. I'm the exact other type of person. I need to read every word before I would even try to put something back together. But for him, it was a challenge, and he always succeeded at putting it back together. So we always knew he had an aptitude for it. So we were thrilled to pieces when he decided to go ahead and start this, and he was thrilled as well because it really fit with what his interests were, and he was really good at it. So it was a great kick to get started in this area, and he's just devoured the opportunities that have been presented to him. So we're very happy.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I want to follow back up with you, Steve, and share, if you have parents on the call today, or a parent would come to you and ask a little bit about apprenticeship, what would be the advice that you would give a parent whose child is interested in pursuing that as a pathway?
I would definitely say they should check it out. I'm kind of old school, so I was brought up in the time when there was one path considered to be the successful path. You go to college, you take it from there, and
Mhm.
then your life is set for you. Well, that's not the way real life works. And the apprenticeship is exactly a way to go ahead and learn skills and develop qualities that will succeed in the workplace. It's an opportunity to get more people into the workplace, and I would highly encourage parents to consider that as one of several paths for success in life. There's not just one path that's going to work for everybody, and be open to the possibility that there are other ways to get where you want to go, and you'll have a much happier life and a better life. And if you find your fit, that's what your life is going to be about, finding your fit. And if you can do that in the employment area through apprenticeship, go for it.
Yeah, very well said, Steve. I think you bring up a really valuable point that in many other parts of the world, apprenticeship, college, there's many different pathways that are all extremely legitimate and have high growth opportunities. And in the US, there has been this, maybe favoring of certain pathways over others. So I want to ask that question to you as well, Miss Evans. A parent comes to you that says, hey, my child is considering this apprenticeship. What would your recommendations, your thoughts, your advice be for them? I think you'll have to come off mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was off mute. I would definitely recommend the apprenticeship. I would definitely, because like what Steve said about when we were growing up, it was just one way. You had to go to college, and I feel like the apprenticeship will give them more skills. They will get into the workforce more faster, and they will also be debt free. So that's what I recommend. If your child has a skill set and they want to advance their skills, I recommend them doing an apprenticeship, get into the field that they are interested in, and start making that money and become career orientated. Like, I really recommend it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So I am a parent of a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. I know, Floor, when you were making some of your transition, I believe your son was 2. Is that correct?
Yes, he was at 2.5, almost 3, but in that, they're all kind of the same at that
Yeah,
age.
those fun years. Maybe you could talk to us just a little bit about what the reality was of trying to break into a new industry, a new field, into technology specifically, while navigating, being a parent.
Yeah. Well, under overwhelming to say the least. But you have your good days and you have your bad days. It's very, it can be stressful at times. You're in a new environment, meeting new people, learning a lot, and then, it's not like your parent duties go away when you come back home. So I think it's definitely it can be stressful at times, but I feel like, the overarching goal is to finish this, move up, have a great career. And luckily for myself, I mean, that was exactly what happened. So I look back at those memories, with fondness, but also kind of very humbling, going through that and succeeding. I feel very thankful that I got the opportunity. And, my son is now 7, and I feel like he got to see my growth, and that really impacts him as well.
Absolutely. I have a follow-up question for, just curious, if you were talking to employers that, are considering hiring apprentices or maybe have apprentices that are parents, what advice would you have just to foster an environment that really helps parents grow in their apprenticeship? Yeah, what suggestions would you have for employers to cultivate talent that maybe are juggling multiple responsibilities?
Yeah, totally. I think flexibility is always something that can be easily incorporated. Flexibility either to leave work early or, uh, come to some type of agreement that would kind of let the parent be a parent when necessary, all those kind of emergencies that might arise. But also I think, putting in touch with other people at the at the business or other employees that are parents too, because I feel like we want to connect, and I feel like as a parent, we can, I guess, bond over being parents and the struggle. So I feel like that, even that little bit of connection, maybe the mentor is also a parent, can really help an apprentice believe that they belong there and that they will succeed there.
Sharing that. So Peter, Steve, your son, he is extremely dedicated. I think I have the pleasure of getting to meet with him, work with him directly. We have to push him to take days off. And I hear him say, I just want to be here to support the team. He is the final review of any code that is released on the Build Within technology. I mean, it's a lot of responsibility that he carries. I'm curious, as his father, if you could talk a little bit of how you've seen him grow as a person, professionally, socially through, his apprenticeship over the year. And I think you'll have to come off mute as well.
Sorry, first of all, I thank you for what you said about him. I really appreciate that. He loves his work. He works, as you said, very hard. He loved the challenge of the work. He's told me that he views himself as an exterminator because he has to make sure there are no bugs in the program. So he has to make sure everything's working right. I think what he loves to do is see a challenge and take it, no matter how long it takes for him to do it, to solve that problem, he will stick at it. He's gone many hours without eating, without taking breaks, just as you know, because he just wants to keep on working. I think what the apprenticeship has done for him and continues to do for him, and now that he's way past it, is give him the confidence to really employ his abilities to the extent that he can, and they're tremendous abilities. He's got quite a mind for this, and he loves working with the people there. It's a small organization, well, it's growing rapidly, but he loves everybody he works with, and it gives him confidence. It gives us confidence in him, and we've really been very, very thrilled with how he's done, and we love hearing comments like yours at the outset of our conversation. So thank you.
Ms. Evans, I'd like to turn to you to speak on a little bit of the same. You mentioned China was 22. She started her apprenticeship, and she did a pre-apprenticeship actually to learn some skills before moving into that apprenticeship. Talk a little bit as a mother, how you've seen her grow, develop, what changes you've noticed during her apprenticeship and thereafter.
China has blossomed into an adult. And, you know, sometimes as parents, when we have adult children, we don't see them as adults. We still see them as our babies or whatever. But I really like China really encourages me because I'm not good when it comes to speaking, public speaking or speaking to someone. So she kind of encourages me to, you know, to open up a little more and you know, be upfront. So like I see like the growth in her, and it really amazes me from her being, because when I look at her sometimes I still look at her as that little girl that I'm so used to having, but like she's a grown woman now, and I see how she speaks to people, how she conversates, how she deals with people, and it's like it's just it makes me happy to see her do that. And I'm like, it's amazing how much she have grown, and she takes her job so serious. It's times when I'm like, I get off at 4 o'clock. China, you still working? Why are you still working? Oh, I have to finish this. I have to do that. Some weekends, some nights, she's on the computer all day trying to make sure everything is done that she needs done. And I think that she gets that work ethic from me because I'm the same way. It's like I cannot do my work unless I can't finish my work unless everything is done correctly. So I see that in her, and I see that she has matured a lot, and she has become very independent. Yeah, so I think that this apprenticeship was the best route for her to take. And I'm so excited for her, and I'm excited for her in her future endeavors as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we are so lucky to have China. I see that work ethic day in and day out, and just how she adds value tremendously. Many people, even during her apprenticeship, didn't know she was an apprentice because she's functioning in many ways, just a traditional employee taking on work, projects, and adding extreme value and a lot of amazing insights and ideas that she would bring to the table. You know, exposure, things about social media that many of us had no idea about. She was really, you know, the forefront of training many of the team members on different technologies, just because that was the waters that she was living in. So we've seen much of the same. Okay, Floor, I want to turn it to you. So we talk about apprenticeships, you know, in abstract, but maybe you could break it down. Like, what is an apprenticeship? What did the day-to-day look like? The learning, the contributing, for the individuals on the call that maybe have heard about apprenticeships, but don't necessarily know how that would look in the technology space, or really what the actual nuts and bolts of an apprenticeship are.
Sure, totally. So yeah, an apprenticeship program, as we all know, it basically means you are learning on the job. Now, depending on what your apprentice program is about, you know, you could be doing different things. Mine was for software engineering, and so I had no background in software engineering when I joined. I was just curious and motivated, and kind of, you know, found the opportunity. But my day to day was helping teams, you know, find bugs, learning how our code worked, just the ins and outs of being a software engineer, working with different types of shareholders, you know, because you're not only within your group, you have to kind of communicate across teams, everyone's on the same page. And it really prepares you for the workforce. You know, going to school is one thing, you know, you learn whatever it is you learn there, but an apprenticeship really prepares you not just for what you're going to be doing every day, because, you know, I most days I'm at my computer writing code, shipping out features. But I'm also, you know, talking to teammates, making sure that everyone's on the same page. So it not only gives you, you know, a strong foundation to learn, you know, whatever skill set that you need to learn to succeed in your apprenticeship, but you really learn to communicate with other people and really prepare yourself to become an integral part of your team.
I remember you were kind of the CSS and HTML guru a few months into your apprenticeship. So we're taking, you know, campaign pages, making them beautiful. We always, you know, saw the work that came out of your tickets, your projects. how are you actually learning some of those things while you were working? What were some of the approaches that you took? Who were you learning from? And just, I think we all were amazed in how quickly, the quality of your work a few months into the apprenticeship. So talk to us. I know you maybe made it look easy from the outside, but those are incredibly, technical, valuable skills that you were developing very quickly. I'm curious if you could share a little bit of how that worked in the background.
Yeah, so a lot of it is kind of studying on your own time, but I think a really big part of it is relying on your team. As an apprentice, you have a dedicated mentor, you can lean on your team. So I think a lot of the way that I was able to kind of like ramp up really quickly was I had really good support and I leaned on my support and I asked questions. In an apprenticeship program, you have to ask questions because how else would you learn? Your input is valuable, what you're wondering about is valuable, and just really being able to speak up and lean on others, and then kind of develop your own routine. At least for me, once I kind of got the hang of it, or if I had a question, I knew where I could go to find documentation or who I could ask to really help me approach the problem. Because I mean, in software engineering, a lot of the time you will be chasing down bugs, trying to fix issues, and it's not really in black and white. You kind of have to go deep into the code or try to reproduce whatever a user is having issues with. And you really have to turn on that problem solving hat. But when you have a really good team to kind of lean on and ask for advice, I feel like you level up your skill so much faster. And in an apprenticeship program, that's kind of what you are expected to do. You're expected to ask questions, to make mistakes. This is your time to learn.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. And I'll piggyback on that. I think one of the feedback that we receive time and time again is you're learning as an apprentice the gold standard in terms of the technologies, the frameworks, the processes, and not learning those things in abstract, learning a technology maybe in a university, then you get into the job and realize like, oh, it's a very different implementation. So just the value of learning those things that are relevant, that are being used in the workplace, and getting to learn in a group setting. I really appreciate you sharing some of that, Flor. So Steve, we asked a little bit about what advice you would give to parents that are evaluating perhaps different pathways. We have a question from the audience that all parents want the best for their children. What advice would you give to parents who are talking to their children about their career pathway? How best can they lay out all the options for their personal career journey, whether that may be apprenticeships, college, or other opportunities? So what advice do you have to parents who are helping and supporting their children as they evaluate different options?
I think that's a great question, and it's a hard one for parents because as a parent myself, I know one has definite preconceptions as to what your child's life should be like in the future. You envision, you dream of a path for that person, and oftentimes ego gets in the way, and you say, I want that person to be just like me. Well, it's not going to work like that. It's just not how life is, and the best advice I could give to a parent considering this is be open and honest and frank. Say what your biases might be about certain approaches, but that's not your decision to make ultimately. It's the child's life that's going to be determined by the child, of course, with some financial considerations in play as well, obviously, but you don't want to ram something down your child's throat and say, this is the way it's going to be for you. You've got to understand as a parent that there are choices children make, and as they become adults, that may or may not be your choice, but that's not the issue. The issue is what's going to work for them and what's going to be the best life for them. So be as open and honest and frank as you can be in laying out the options, and try to keep your biases to yourself.
Tasha, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on the same. So, parent is looking to give their children advice on how to navigate this big world and big decisions. I mean, I remember at 18 feeling so much pressure to make the right decision. So what advice do you have for parents that are helping guide their children as they evaluate a variety of different opportunities that are out there.
Yes, I agree. I also agree with Steve. As parents, we have to stay more open because sometimes the choices that are made is not our children's choice. We want them to, sometimes we make the choices for them, and I feel like you need to let your children be open to what they really want to do, because if we just push things upon them, it's not going to be a good turnout. So like I really feel like we need to let the children like have the talk with your kids. What is it that you really want to do? So that way the kids can do what they what interests them. We can't push things upon them and say, well, this is what you want to do because this is how it's supposed to be. This is how I was raised and this is what I was told to do. But nowadays things are so different. You have to, be open to different suggestions, and you have to let them make some type of choices. So like I said, I agree with Steve, that as parents, just have that discussion. Let them tell you what it is that they want to do. Don't tell them what they need to do. Well, this is what you're going to do, because then it may be it will be bad. So I'm glad that as far as me and my daughter, I'm glad that we were able to have those discussions, and she was able to make her own choices in her pathway to her career. So I'm happy about that. So that's my advice to any parent. Just listen to your kids, have that talk with them, and let them make some of the decisions on their own.
I'd like to add one point to that, if I may.
Please.
Is that if you're a parent and you're faced with a situation where your child is saying, I don't want to go to college, or I want to try an apprenticeship, or I want to try something else. If you don't know what an apprenticeship is, or you don't know what the other options are, don't say no. Investigate them with your child, learn about them, talk to other people who've gone through the same process or the same program.
Mm-hmm.
The better informed you'll be, and you can help your child make a decision that is going to be the best for him or her. So,
Right.
recognize what's going on. And if you don't know something about an issue or a topic or a potential field, learn about it and learn with your child about it.
Right. I agree.
Absolutely. At Build Within, we have a big focus on career exploration. So as you are navigating, career changers, those that are new in their career, learning what a day in the life of is, and understanding what are some of your natural inclinations, your skills, your interests that maybe lend to certain roles. And so I even think about myself as a parent. In 15 years, my child's going to be navigating some of these things. And how many jobs they're going to be at that time that we don't even have a title for. You never would have thought that there's an opportunity in prompt engineering or QAing in the generative artificial intelligence space. So Steve, I just echo that exploration, educating, learning, exposure, even in the traditional trades. I think many people don't know that electricians can easily make six figures after an apprenticeship. And so taking that onus to educate on what opportunities are out there, what are the high demand, what are the high growth opportunities, what do the pathways look like? That as parents, the burden on us is to stay informed of what's out there. We have another question from the audience that I'd love to pass to you, Floor. And I'll share maybe a little of my perspective in this as well. But how is being a parent similar to being an apprentice? Would you kick us off with that?
Yes, sure. So similarities. Well, you're always learning. I'm always learning how to be the best parent to my child. Your children, grow, and at every stage and age, it's a different ball game. So you gotta, kind of try to start from scratch. And I feel like an apprenticeship program is the same way. You're learning on the job. It's not like everything is going to be, straightforward the first month of your apprenticeship program. It can change month to month. You're going to be learning about a bunch of different, issues that may arise on the job, or how you handle things. So it's just, I like to say I'm a lifelong learner. And that's kind of the way that I felt after leaving my apprenticeship and embarking, on in my role as a software engineer. I just never lost that love and I guess knowledge that you're gonna have to learn. You're not gonna be good at everything. You're gonna have to start from scratch, but you can do it.
That's great. That's great. I think about the individuals in this call. I mean, no formal technical background in software development for Floor, no college degree in QA for China, no formal education in the technology space. Myself as well was kind of a career changer that found my way into technology, and there is this continual learning, continually to be humbled. I think we all as parents can think about those days that was really very challenging. I think of days where kids are sick and there's no childcare. Recently, put Bluey on for my kids, gave them snacks, and locked myself in a room hoping they won't interrupt me for during a call. So I'm curious, Floor, if there's a moment that stands out from your apprenticeship where it was just a lot to juggle and you're kind of wondering, like, can I really sustain this? And maybe how you pushed through some of those more challenging times.
Yeah, I have two that really come to mind that I'll never forget. The first time was my son's daycare was having a Valentine's Day party around, I think it was like 10 or 11, and I would usually drop my son off at like 7, because I needed to be at work by 9. And that day he was just very, very sad and crying and didn't want me to leave. And it's just, it breaks your heart, but that, what I'm sacrificing today will bring me tenfold in the future. And that's how it worked out. So I see that, or I have that memory, and I can see my son and his tears coming out of his eyes. But then I look at him today and he is 7 years old and probably doesn't even remember that day. But what he does see and does remember is my work ethic and how I really transitioned into a career that I'm proud of, that he is proud of. And then another vivid memory was when I first started my apprenticeship program. We all, the engineers and the QA team, we would get onto a call kind of at the end of the day once a big release was happening, and we were, testing things on the platform. And I had just put my son to bed, and I hopped on the call, but then my son woke up and he was like, "What's going on? What are you doing?" And I had to kind of keep him from being too loud. And then everyone else on the call was like, "Whoa, what's that?" So it was like, "Oh no, I'm new here. I'm an apprentice." And everyone, was really accepting, and it wasn't really an issue. But you yourself, when you're in that moment, you're like, "This is overwhelming. This is too much." But you got to take it as it comes and just keep moving forward.
That's great. So we previously talked a little bit about, Steve, you're charged to educate yourself. If your child is asking about opportunities that maybe you're not as familiar with, because, maybe most of your circle or most of your friends pursued a particular pathway. What steps have you taken as a parent to educate yourself about apprenticeships? What resources have been helpful? Maybe we'll start with you, Steve, and then I'll pass it to you, Miss Evans.
Well, just trying to learn from my son about what he's doing at work is probably the most important thing. Because I didn't know much about apprenticeships beforehand, but I want to pick up on a couple of other points that someone made about the advantages of apprenticeships. One of the things that we haven't really talked about is the setting that the apprenticeship takes place in is a very helpful, cooperative setting, not one that's combative or I'm out to beat you to get to the next level before you do. And I think that's a tremendous help for somebody starting out in a job and trying to learn at the same time, learning how a workplace works. You have to be a team, and you're focused on one team goal. And I think that those things aren't always as tangible as some of the other specifics of the job requirements are that you're doing or trying to learn, but that's as helpful as learning the nuts and bolts of the job. So I just want to make sure that doesn't get lost in the discussion as well.
Anything there to add, Miss Evans, on just how to, as parents, become more aware of apprenticeships and what opportunities are out there?
Yes. Before China told me about the apprenticeship, I never really knew anything about it. And when she explained to me about how the apprenticeship works and what actually goes into the apprenticeship, I said, wow, I wish I knew about this when I was looking for a job, because I look at her, I see how she has the support from her team. Like when she has questions, she can reach out to somebody reaches right back out to her. They have meetings, they do everything. So that's what I look at all the time, and it encourages me. And I work for a corporate company, and I'm looking, I'm like, we don't even do that. I'm like, wow. I was like, let me see if I can incorporate some of the things that I learned from my daughter about apprenticeship into my company. Let me see if they can follow some of the leads just to keep the teamwork strong. So that's what I see in when I look at my daughter and I look at her work, I see the strength of the team. And I think to have that strength, that keeps you encouraged to do the job at your best ability. So I look at her and I see that's where she get that from. Like, because it's days that I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't do this no more. I'm just tired. And then I just say, look, she said, Mom, you know your work ethic is strong. You know you're not gonna do that. So you just go ahead and just keep doing it. So like I just feel like it's good. I wish I knew more about it like back when I was looking for work. Now that I know what I know, I'm like, it's amazing. It's really amazing. Yeah.
We have an abundance of questions from the audience, so we'll try to get to as many as possible. Flora, I'm going to pass this one to you. Audience member says, what do you do now? What technologies do you know that you didn't know 5 years ago?
Yeah, so right now I work full time as a software engineer. My main focus is front end. I work for a AI company. We do like an AI note taker. And yeah, I mean, I think I started learning the languages that I use now for work during my apprenticeship program. And I would like to, I think, I mean, I have grown so much in my knowledge and comfort in that language has grown, but also how I approach learning new, computer languages. I'm less scared because I have a foundation, and I don't have any off the top of my head that are kind of new, but you just strengthen your skills, and with software engineering in particular, the role that you have next might not be you might not be using the languages or frameworks that you're used to, but you have that foundation to learn more. So that's kind of what I've really noticed, and kind of like the strength that I have is that I approach problems in with a very open mind, and when I need to learn something new, I'm gung-ho, let's go. Yeah.
It's amazing where you build this self-confidence of like, I can figure something out and I can have the skills to go find the resources I need to learn something. And I think those are the skills that are really going to take this whole generation of apprentices to the next level to solve many of the problems that we don't even know that will be facing us in the future. And I have learned so much from apprentices. I think working in companies, I've gotten spoiled that have apprentices that have that embedded into the DNA, that we all benefit because we, have to do the same thing that we're asking of apprentices to continue to be lifelong learners, to continue to find mentors, to build skills. And that really, many of the apprentices at the companies where I worked have led the way in that and really pulled the rest of the company to say, hey, let's continue to all have that kind of spirit. We have another question just about some of the basics, which I really appreciate. How long is an apprenticeship? Is it full-time? Is it paid? Is it 8 hours a day? Is it in an internship? So an apprenticeship is full-time, it is paid. If it is not paid, it is not an apprenticeship. There are some programs out there that maybe call themselves an apprenticeship, but The core elements of a registered apprenticeship provide the training, the mentorship, the wage increases over time. And typically, yeah, 40 hours a week, and they can vary in length. So some that are more close to a year, up to 5 years, really depends on the role. Many of the tech and tech adjacent roles, maybe 1 to 2 years, but that can vary again depending on some of the roles. There's another question that I saw just about who qualifies for an apprenticeship. Okay, so anyone qualifies for an apprenticeship. That's the beauty. There's some programs that maybe require you to be 17 or 18. There's pre-apprenticeship programs that offer opportunities prior to apprenticeship, which is another great way to get exposure, to learn more about a field. So yeah, anyone qualifies. There are certain programs that maybe have different qualifications in terms of maybe you need a high school degree. Build Within, you don't even need a high school degree into many of our programs. So those are questions that you can ask specific programs as a parent or as a potential apprentice. I have a lot more questions. One is about really the role of kind of schools and educators. So from the audience, a new study says 50% of graduates do not work in their degree. So folks that go get a degree that don't use it, I would be falling in part of those 50%. What can you say to schools about how they can perhaps do this better? What specific things could schools do? And at what grade? So open that up to any of our panelists to talk about maybe how schools and educators can be part of this solution in exposing individuals to apprenticeship opportunities.
I can go ahead and start. Yeah, so I am also one of the those that I do not work and do anything in what I earned my degree in previously. And I think that's okay. And I think like there's a lot of other opportunities that you can fall into, but I do agree that schools should do a better job kind of bringing the knowledge to these children or to the adults in school, that to know that there are other opportunities, to meet people in certain jobs that might not be in some connection to the school. And I think, yeah, just bringing that knowledge to them, meeting people who have been in apprenticeship programs, who have a non-traditional path towards whatever career field, just so that you can start creating more of kind of the conversation between the children and high schoolers, just so they know, oh, okay, college is not the only way to get to a fulfilling career.
I would
Steve,
sec
add
I
to
would
that?
I would second that if I could, and certainly the part about college not being the only path. I think we've all learned that, and the point about going outside of the area in which you spent 4 years or more studying, and then you suddenly decide either that you don't like it or that it's not going to provide the type of future that you thought it would. There has to be more of a realization, I think, when you're growing up or when teachers are talking to you, that life is not a straight line. You're going to make detours now and then in your employment life, and probably in other aspects of your life as well, but we're focusing on employment. You've got to be able to understand that there are these different ways out there. And I think if there's a realization by the educators early on that college is not the only way, this is going to benefit all parts of society. It benefits the individual in terms of being an apprentice and getting a position in the area that they have an interest in. It benefits employers because it gets people who are motivated and skilled and want to work in that field. And it benefits the society as a whole because your economy improves, you're making more use of skilled people, and you're making a broader workforce available for employers to consider and to get out there and to educate those people. And I think having the most broad workforce from which you can choose your employees is going to benefit everybody, and it's like a win-win-win situation all around. So I think the more emphasis the earlier by schools on this point would be a big difference for the country.
Great, thanks. Okay, we have a question here for Floor. We hear all the time that AI can save time, but can artificial intelligence help alleviate time constraints for single parents? For example, single mothers potentially reduce inequities of opportunities. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that question.
Yeah, so I mean, I am such a big kind of like proponent for AI, incorporating that. I use it in my day-to-day, if there's things that I don't know, or if I'm trying to solve a problem and I have a question about, the framework I'm using, I log into ChatGPT, ask, and it's not always going to be perfect, the answers you get, but you have to, use your skill and your knowledge to kind of like tease out the answers that you're going to get. But I think the beauty and the excitement with AI is that it can really impact your everyday. It can, you can use it to automate tasks. So let's say, you're a single parent and you have deadlines to make, and things that you have to do maybe outside of work, using AI to automate those, and to maybe send you reminders. Just anything little like that can really help in areas that you just can't really, no human can really do everything. And as a mom, your to-do list is so long. But I really think that there's going to be products that arise, or just tools that you can use to really level up your ability to get things done, and to keep yourself moving in the direction that you want. And AI is going to be great.
All right, we're coming into the last couple minutes. Steve, Miss Evans, for employers, what supports have your children been the beneficiary of that have helped them succeed? So as you think about other employers that are bringing on apprentices, what support should they have in place in order to help their apprentices be successful? I think, Steve, you'll have to come off mute for us.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I think the employers need to consider that when you have apprentices who are working for you, they're not going to have all the answers. They need help. They need support. I remember being told when I first started my career that there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I think that's got to be emphasized over and over again, because people don't know the right way to do something when they first enter a workplace. They need to find out, sometimes through trial and error, but with whatever guidance they can get from not just their superiors, but their colleagues in the workplace, other apprentices, other mentors. And there has to be a continued effort on focusing to make sure that that's encouraged, not discouraged. There are lots of times, especially when you're young, you're afraid or embarrassed to ask a question because you might be viewed as not having the right answers, or not knowing enough to even be where you are. And that's exactly the wrong attitude for an employer to take. So I think anything that dissuades employers from taking that attitude would be helpful in getting apprentices to where they need to be.
All right. So I have a lot of questions here about how do I find apprenticeship opportunities? This sounds amazing. What's the first step? So Lillian's going to put uh, a couple of links, one to apprenticeship hubs and the others to the apprenticeship.gov apprenticeship job finder. So two different resources. I would love to get to the question that I know came in for you, Floor. If you want to answer that one live, the number of Latina women in tech is low. Floor, what do you recommend parents do today to expose their kids to tech opportunities for the future, to inspire more Latinas in tech like you?
Yes, that's a great question, and something that I'm kind of already coming and like having ideas when my son now is 7, and he's like tinkering with stuff. There's a lot of resources online. There's one called Scratch Kids. There's a lot of resources from like from MIT, and just any game that can kind of get the wheels turning on how software engineering or how programming works. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to solve like problems and find a solution to something. And so I feel like as people, we can approach things differently. And as a software engineer, I might approach something differently than my colleague. And so just focusing on like problem solving. We do Minecraft with my child. Minecraft is really, it's a great educational tool to learn kind of how to think about programming. Yeah, there's a bunch of tools out there. I can also send a few resources if there's going to be like a follow-up email. But I think the parent and child both learning together is great, because your child sees you learning and they can kind of draw from kind of how you solve problems and learn new things. And doing it together, you really see how, I wouldn't say easy, but how attainable it is to be in a tech field, be a software engineer, and the career opportunities for your children as they grow, it might be vastly different, but they have that foundation.
Well, I feel like we could just keep talking for hours. This has been such a rich conversation. Miss Evans, Steve, Floor, thank you all so much for really helping give a vision of what opening up multiple pathways for your children, for yourself, how to navigate being an apprentice in a new, intense experience as a parent, and really just appreciate you coming, sharing your thoughts. I will pass it to Lillian in our last minute to share a couple more upcoming events and webinars during youth apprenticeship and beyond.
Great. Thank you all so much. Really enjoyed that discussion, and I think we're due for a part 2 because we have a bunch more questions that didn't get answered. So clearly a lot of interest in this topic. A couple of events that we have coming up in honor of Youth Apprenticeship Week. If you are in the Northern Virginia area, we are having a celebration tomorrow morning between 9 and 11 at the Tower Club. If you are in the Los Angeles area, please join us at the Youth Workforce Center between 4:30 and 6:30. And then lastly, closing out Youth Apprenticeship Week on Friday. If you are in the Chattanooga area, 11:30 to 1:30, we are having a closeout of Youth Apprenticeship Week in Chattanooga. Our next webinar will be on May 23rd, Cracking the Code, Apprenticeships in the cybersecurity arena. So feel free to reach out to us on social media, contact us, email us, etc. And we would love to connect with you. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.